Hi there, welcome to Web Marketing That Works, episode 32. My name is Toby Jenkins and I'm pleased to have on the show today friend and mentor Mike O'Hagan. For those who don't know Mike, he started Mini Movers 27 years ago with a ute and $200. He subsequently built that into a $23 million business and now has businesses with products and teams all over the world. Now, Mike is a really interesting guy and he talks and is really frank about how the financial crisis very nearly killed Mini Movers and what he did about it. And he goes into a lot of the lessons that he learned there. He also shares today why he doesn't believe in structured forward planning and a whole bunch of lessons around overseas outsourcing, what's worked, what hasn't, and how you can manage the process. So I really hope you enjoy and get a lot from today's show. As always, today's show is brought to you by the 33 free web marketing templates from Web Marketing That Works. So please jump over to download those if you're keen at www.bluewiremedia.com.au/book.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
Mike, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Really exciting to have you.
It's great, Toby. Great to be here.
Mike, so just a bit of context for our listeners. Can you give us a little bit of background on you? I mean, there's the Mini Movers journey and now, just as we were talking offline about what you're up to up in Manila. So perhaps, if you don't mind going back to that Mini Movers journey and then we can bring it up to the current day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know me as the founder and owner of Mini Movers. Mini Movers does that short distance, direct door-to-door local moving, and we operate in Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth. 27-year overnight success, extra Telstra winner business of the year and a few other things. Look, I started Mini Movers when I was in my early 30s. I started it with a desire to earn a crap load of money every week and not have to work. And so to me, it was just a machine to generate money for myself and my family. And it's been a very great success story. It's just a matter of finding something that works and just keep playing with it and keep changing it and modifying it and trying things. And most of the things I try don't work, believe it or not. And every now and then I find something that does work. And when I find it does work, I do it more and more. And out of that grew the whole idea of being able to generate businesses out of test, measure and duplicate.
Yeah, for sure. And how has your role changed within Mini Movers over those 27 years then, Mike?
Well, I've evolved myself more out of the company. Look, I've never really worked in the business. I've only never worked on it. I had another business at the time I started Mini Movers, and it was consuming me 7 days a week, 90, 100 hours, 7 days a week, 90, 100 hours a week. And it was too much. And that's why I invented Mini Movers. I invented Mini Movers so I could choose how I spend my time. So I've never really worked in the business. I've only worked on top of it, on it, trying to direct it, and the day-to-day has always been taken care of by four very, very faithful, wonderful managers who actually who in reality run the day-to-day of Mini Movers. And I stay out of that stuff and just hover around on top. And as I've gone on, and Mini Movers had a bit of a hard time doing the GFC, and we learned a few lessons, too many eggs in one basket and a few other things. I've evolved and now setting up other businesses. I think I'm up to about 6 or 8 other businesses and operating in 2 or 3 other countries now. Right. So as time's gone on, I've pulled back and expanded my businesses and diversified a bit and tried to secure my income. I think I learned the GFC, like I said, the GFC taught me a lesson, too many eggs in one basket. And that basket, by the way, may be Australian, may not necessarily be short distance moving.
Yeah, sure. And so what are these other businesses now?
Oh, I've got a lead generation business, have a business that manufactures deep sea diving lights in China and drop trips them out of China. It's very, very global and what it does. A few other things I've got little interests in around the place.
Oh, that's good. Keep you on your toes, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of fun. And I enjoy the game of business, and look, treat it as a game. Don't get too emotionally involved, and it's a big game to me. It's a big game of chess. I just treat it as a game, and what I do is I just keep ambering along, coming up with lots and lots of crazy ideas, and And I keep trying things, and I try and figure out how can I try it in a way that's very affordable. And if I try something, I try and measure the reaction to it. And as I said, most things I try don't work, but every now and then I find something that does work. And when I find it does work, I just do it more and more and more. And that's been my core philosophy in going forward. I don't really forward plan. I don't think you can forward plan because I think the future's changing too rapidly. And as I said, you sit down with a plan of doing one thing, it may be the one thing that's not going to work, which is a bit crazy. So you go out and try 10, 20 things at the same time, and one or two of them will work, and you can grow off that. So the structured forward planning is a bit of a myth, I think. I think if you're just trying stuff and ever evolving and changing, you're going to stay on the leading edge where everything is. And if you stay on the leading edge without overstepping the mark and risking the farm, I think that's the way to grow your business.
Interesting. And so in terms of that, then, what do you do? Any sort of forward planning? Do you set goals as opposed to forward planning? Like, is there a distinction for you?
No, look, I have inside me a burning desire for an amazing lifestyle of very big houses and jet-style lifestyle and big cars and big boats. That's my internal goal where I'm heading towards. It's a lifestyle, but I don't set dates or times around any of that at all. I think that's a bit artificial. I think you're just guessing. I don't like to guess anything. I like to deal with actual facts, not guessing. So, I just have a desire to be somewhere, and I just keep pedaling as fast as I can to being there without sitting down and saying in 2015 I'm going to do this. But that just make much sense to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's cool. Well, Mike, to put this conversation in a bit of context for our audience too, I thought, we first met you at one of the first business courses that we attended through the new Enterprise Initiative Scheme up in Brisbane, and you've offered support and advice for Blue Wire ever since. Thank you very much.
It's a long time ago now.
What's that, sorry?
A long time ago now.
Yeah, no, it has been. And one of the key things that we've taken away from all the teachings from you has been that sort of energy and enthusiasm to test and to try new things. And it's something that we've, really tried to emulate as well. So I'd love to sort of dive into that part of it, to hear what you're trying and testing, hear what's worked, what hasn't, have there been any catastrophes? So if you're happy to sort of kick along in that vein, then we can talk about mini movers and also sort of where you're at now with your new businesses and up in Manila and stuff as well.
Yeah, indeed. Look, that's fine. Look, the world's changing, and it's changing very, very rapidly, and the connectivity of the internet means that we're now able to source things in our businesses. We can buy things anywhere in the world. We can sell things anywhere in the world. And the latest thing is that we can now employ anywhere in the world. And when you look at the ability of anybody, could be sitting in a house in the middle of nowhere, one person, a micro business or a large business, it doesn't matter which. Nowadays, it's all a very level playing field. Anybody can source every component for their business at what I call world's best value. I have this business that I'm involved in this business that manufactures deep sea diving lights in China, and we drop ship them out of China, and we use the Philippines for administration, and we incorporated the company in Hong Kong, and we sell the lights into the rich markets where there's a lot of money, and ultimately everything comes Australia, where as a resident we pay our tax in Australia. That business just floats out there, and each part of that business is sourced at the best value it could ever be. And as long as we keep innovating products and changing the products and do the innovation bit, as long as our manufacturing component and our distribution component and our sales component and our administration component are at the best value in the world, then that business will always be highly viable. And that's the big change we've got. The internet has allowed anybody to set up extremely worldwide competitive businesses. It's a great change. And indeed, the Philippines is part of that. In the Philippines, we can access workers with extremely good skills out of a good education system and massive numbers that we can't help but understand. 105 million people, 500,000 college graduates a year, very, very English speaking, a compulsory English in the system for a long, long time, or over 100 years. A really good system. very globalised and switched on people. We can access them at wages that are 90% lower than Australia, whilst that, of course, has the connotation, Australians are going to lose jobs, yes, but it's also Australian businesses are now very, very well competitive, and that's really good for the country. And that's what I'm involved in now. I'm involved in teaching Australian businesses how to do business in the Philippines.
Yeah, right. Wow. And so what has sort of, in terms of how long have you been doing this particular part then?
Well, yeah, that's my my business, my Manila business tour. Mike's Manila's business tours.com it is, by the way.
Yep.
Look, I've been doing it for about 18 months. It started as a bit of a joke where as you are aware, I've been mentoring a lot of businesses over the years, and a whole lot of my mentorees got together and asked me what I was doing up in the Philippines. I'd gone up to the Philippines to try and rescue my mini movers that had got into strife with the GFC, and I needed to dramatically reduce overheads in a big hurry, and I used the Philippines to do that.
Right.
And it actually saved the company, to be honest with you. It was that bad.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Well, the GFC hit us pretty bad. We had a 60% reduction in market size for a while there, and that hurt like anything, because we're certainly leading in Australia with the leading market in short distance moving. So I'd used the Philippines. I'd learned a bit around it, and I sharing that with my mentorees, and some of them said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I said, well, come on up and have a look. And so for the first 6 months or so, every month or so I'd have a tour. I'd have about half a dozen mates would come up, and we'd spend 5 days driving around looking at businesses and looking at bad businesses, looking at good businesses, and looking at what other people are doing, and looking at Filipinos and how we can hire them and how we can maximise them and deal with the cultural differences. And it became very, very successful.
Mm.
And it from there it evolved into where it is now, a fully commercialised tour business, where every 2 to 3 weeks I personally conduct a tour up there, and it's just got busier and busier and more demand for it. It's been great. It's a great way to learn business, and I've mixed into that entrepreneurial learning as well. I believe you can encourage and learn entrepreneurship. I think there's entrepreneurship in a lot of people. They just don't realise it's there because nobody's told them you can, in fact, easily set up a business and develop into a large business. You've just got to do it.
And in fact, it's probably easier now than it ever has been, right?
Yep, there are more business opportunities now than I've ever seen in all the time I've been in business. I've never seen it as easy to get into business as what it is now, with some amazing opportunities to make a lot of money. Everywhere I look, I can see easily ways that you can start businesses and grow them and generate value out of something and turn that into profit. That is so much so easier now. There's connectivity in the internet, and as you realise, your websites and your internet marketing and all those things are just making it so much easier now to do business. It really are.
Mm. So, Mike, can we dig into a few of those areas? Because, to get into some detail then. So, if we can, because Mini Movers is obviously the established business, and we'll come back to Manila if we can. But Mini Movers, when Adam and I first met you, you were already doing some incredible things online from a marketing standpoint and a business standpoint. You were using the web better than anyone that I'd come across at that stage of the game, that's for sure. Can you talk us through perhaps some of your web marketing journey into, for Mini Movers, and perhaps if you've got examples from this Manila and other ventures, then happy to dig into those too.
Yeah, well, the world for Mini Movers changed with the GFC and changed quite radically. And I suppose in marketing terms, I can share with you that in 2007, I spent $1.2 million in the Yellow Pages book. And everybody goes, wow, well, I've got to tell you, and I will share this with you now, that was generating $18 million worth of work a year. It was working very, very well. And in a short period, at the same time as the GFC and we had a big reduction in the market, there was also a massive change in consumer behaviour. And fundamentally, the Yellow Pages book stopped working. It really dramatically stopped working. And the consumers really didn't go as online as people said, and they certainly didn't go to social media. They sort of scattered in every direction, and that created a lot of problems for us. It created problems in a few areas. It allowed competitors to get in, and I've now got copycats popping up all over the place. Little guys that could go with 1 or 2 trucks. They used to struggle with the yellow pages in the past. Suddenly they could build a little website and get enough work for 1 or 2 trucks. My initial reaction to that was to build websites, and I just started building little websites everywhere. And man, I don't know what sort of numbers I got up to, but seriously, it must have got up to in the hundreds of websites I had all over the place. Just, you know, when you've got your competitors can build a website and get work, how do you counteract that? You must build more websites than them. And that's what we were doing. That, of course, doesn't work now. Mr. Google woke up to all that sort of thing as time went on, and that's changed. And when I went up to the Philippines, I got access to data miners, I suppose, people that can sit on the net and just mine potential clients and do it in a very cost-effective way. So,
and how are they doing that?
Well, in my market, I'm interested in somebody who's about to move, and whilst I don't really want to go into a lot of detail here, I've got to be a bit careful what I say, but
sure.
There's a lot of things that people do online just before they need us that allows us to detect them,
sure.
and in cases find out who they are. And we have, I think I've got about 7 data miners in Manila right now. All they do all day, every day, is mine the internet for potential movers in my marketplaces and put those into a big database, and they marry it up to a whole lot of other databases we have. A simple example would be in Brisbane, of course. At one stage, just before the downturn, we were moving 1,000 house loads a week. So we have everybody we've moved in a big database. So we have everybody going right back about 12 years or so in this big database. Well, obviously, when we see an address come on the market or do something that indicates that something's happening, we just run that against their previous database, and often it pops up that they're a client of ours in the past, and we know that one of our clients is getting ready to move again. Right. So we can react to that in the way that we need to react. We've got obviously their name and permission to contact them and all sorts of things, so we can handle that. And there's other ways you can do it as well. So we're mining potential clients. We're using databases to control it and to control how we contact those people. We contact them through all the different ways you'd contact them. We phone them, we mail them, we email them, all the different ways that you could probably contact them depending on who they are and exactly what their circumstances are. So that's a new way that you can use the cost advantages of the Philippines. But having said that, all my other stuff's done up there too. I've got full-time webbies up there. I've got 2 full-time web coders just doing nothing but playing with my websites and coding that. I've had my marketing manager, an Australian marketing manager up there running it all, running a marketing team.
What's the size of your team up there now?
At the moment, it's about 30 people.
Right. And will the plan be to grow that, or?
No, I don't think so. I think we've balanced off. We've got it's mainly back office processes and marketing that we're doing up there. We've sort of, last year I can share that we spent $19,000 in the yellow pages. So the reduction from $1.2 million to $19,000 means we had a little bit of a budget spare to be able to rebuild the machine in a different way. And fundamentally, that's what I've done. I've taken that money out of yellow pages and put it into the Philippines, where I hire a lot of people and really, really great people, and have developed a different way of marketing my business. And you just couldn't dream of doing that in Australia. It would be impossible. And there's a lot of other Australians up there. Well, I can share with you that there's 1.2 million Filipinos working for Western businesses and back office processes, most of them in the USA. For Australian businesses, there's currently about 150,000 Filipinos servicing Australian businesses, and that is growing at an extraordinary rate right now. And most of us are not replacing jobs in Australia. Most of us, like I have, I took the Yellow Pages spend and spent it up there and developed a new marketing machine. Most of us are inventing new ways, new things that we can do in our business.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's supporting the growth of the business, then you're supporting, job creation.
Well, that's right.
Aren't you?
Exactly. Well, we lost a lot of people in the downturn. We went from about 500 staff down to about 280. Right. And once we rebuilt up in the Philippines and took that money and rebuilt the marketing, we got our growth back in the company, and now we're getting back up again. I think we're about 350 and still growing now. So you're right. What we're doing up in the Philippines is creating Australian jobs, and that's just the way it is. It's a shame that people often misconstrue it and see it the wrong way, but that's what I'm doing, and it's working for me. And now I'm teaching it. I've got plenty of people coming up, and I show them what we're doing, and I show them what others are doing, and I show them what we should and shouldn't do. I think about half the Australian businesses that go up there mess it up. They don't understand a lot of the nuances up there. It is a different country, a completely different system.
Well, Mike, let's talk through a few of those things if we can. So, let's talk through, perhaps while we're on it, what hasn't worked or what you've seen not work up there versus what you've seen that has worked really well.
Yeah. I think it would be fair to say that they're extremely good at following processes and following systems, but not that great at innovating. So I see Australians go up there and say, look, I want to hire a Filipino who can build websites, who can also is an expert in Xero, can do my back-end accounts, who can also do phone sales. Well, such a person doesn't exist in one brain. And you turn around to them and say, well, can you find that person in Australia? And they go, no. I say, well, why do you think you're going to find them up here? Yeah. So I think there's an over-expectation about what they can do a lot. Like I said, they follow processes very well. It's a bit hard to say they don't innovate. They do innovate in their own society. What it's difficult for them to do is innovate in our society. The culture differences are such that it's what's protecting us at the moment. We're really being protected with this Chinese thing. The Chinese have the inability to sell to us directly, and that is because they can't understand the way we think when we buy and sell things. And because of the cultural differences, and that's protecting us at the moment, because otherwise Chinese manufacturers would just simply go direct with their sales, and that would wipe out everybody. And that's not happening, and it's not happening anywhere. So they can't innovate inside our culture, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. And we also can't innovate very much in their culture. The cultural differences are different, that we are very different in the way we think. Filipinos, for instance, work for their family. We work for ourselves. 12 million Filipinos currently live overseas outside of the Philippines. All of them send all of their money back to the Philippines. It's a completely normal family thing for them to do. I can't get my kids to send their wages back to me. They don't seem to get that idea at all. It's completely normal, and it's quite a different mindset that you work for your family and you share everything inside the family environment. Where in Australia, we very much are independent on our own. I think as soon as we get to about 18 or 19 or whatever it is, somewhere around about there, we decide we want to get out of home, and that's it. And then when mum and dad get old, we whack them into a home and look after them. Where in the Philippines, of course, they have them living in their own home, and it's just part of their complete normal way they do things. And that thinking changes a lot of stuff, We have expats managing it with Filipino managing Filipino. We have to have expats running it, because if you have a Filipino running it, they will, and this may harsh, but they will put their cousin in the job before the best person for the job, because to them, that is the normal correct thing to do. To us, it's the correct thing is to put the right person in the job. However, having said that, they're very fragile in their nature and have very much a saving the face thing, and have a special reverence of Westerners. They don't. They have an admiration, I think is the best word for it. They have an admiration of Westerners, and if the Westerner openly shows that he's unhappy with a Filipino, and he does that in front of the Filipinos' peers, they will just fracture their trust, and they will just walk out and not come back to the job at all. So to us, they're very fragile. To them, we come across as harsh and unjust and a little bit hard. And so there's a big difference there. And for that reason, you really have to have Filipino managing Filipino. And these are all the little nuances. And once you understand these things, then you can really get some massive productivity and win-wins for everybody.
So what's your structure then up there, Mike? Is it you've got an Australian, say your marketing manager that you were talking about earlier. You've got your marketing manager up there, and then he or she is in charge of a team of Filipinos with a Filipino manager. Is that how it works?
Yeah, look, exactly. I've actually got 2 expats up there. I use what's called a seat leaser. There are 7 different ways that you can outsource, ranging from the virtual workers and the O-desks and freelancers that you are probably aware of, which are generally speaking are independents and houses. There are some small little business things in there, right through to what we call the corporate BPOs, which was done 18 years ago by the big multinational corporates. Where they just run structured set processes like battery hens in a way. It's quite disgusting what they do, I think, sometimes. But in the middle there's seat leases and staff leases and various other ways that you can build teams. So I've actually built a team inside a seat lease. And what that means is I don't have to have a legal entity up there. I can start very, very quickly. I can ramp up or ramp down very, very quickly without risk. It's a very flexible arrangement for me that suits me. So I use somebody else's, I use a middle party to use their legal entity, and I use their recruitment and HR. And then we have a team up there of the 30 people. I've got 2 expats across it, and I've got a Filipino managers in the middle helping us manage the Filipinos. And they have, as I said, the family thing's extremely important to them. So when somebody's sick in the family, they don't come to work. You've got to get used to that sort of thing. And they deal with all that to make sure what's fair and unfair and help us with all those things. So that's my structure is expat on top, Filipino managing, Filipino in the middle management style, and then a whole lot of really great, well-educated workers in the middle, down helping run the processes and systems that we've got in place.
That's fantastic. And so, have you had any sort of catastrophes yourself in terms of your learning process around this? Or
oh yeah, man, that's what I share on my tour. I've learned so much. I remember, I think about 6 months after we started, I had a group of businessmen in the middle of my operation up there, and I was making what I suppose in hindsight was some pretty derogatory comments about Americanism and how Americans really only understand their language and don't understand all the other words in the language. It was one thing about Australians is that we're born and raised with British TV, American TV and our own stuff. So we actually know all the different names for everything. We know that a footpath is a sidewalk, and Americans only know what a sidewalk is sort of style. And I was making some rather derogatory comments about how one of the challenges with the Filipinos is that they're very American and we have to teach them all the other words. Otherwise we have strife with them working with Australians, and 3 of them took offence to it and just simply got up and walked out and never came back. And that's when I sort of learnt that, wow, these guys are very, very fragile in the way you can treat them, that they'll take things that we say the wrong way, and was certainly taken out of context, but to them that was it. And even though we went out and said that's out of context, they still didn't come back. So that's just one of many, many little stories I've got of things that go wrong and things that you don't expect. But, it's just when you're dealing with different countries and different things, and I have this operation in Shenzhen and China as well, and the Chinese are very, very different again. And we just learn to deal with that. And if you can learn to deal with all these different cultures and different ways of thinking, then you can become a lot more successful in your business habits. And globalization is a real thing, guys. Australia doesn't exist. The world's gone flat. The borders have dissolved. We're now living in planet Earth with 2.5 billion people connected together in a thing called the internet. It's one market. Just go forth and market.
And have you seen anything that's worked really well, and any sort of surprises to you that something that you tried that you thought, oh, geez, that's interesting?
Yeah, we're doing a fair bit of work with voice up there. We're ringing clients and stuff. I was very hesitant at first. I thought the accent would be a big problem. It's not. Australians, you've got this, so many Australian. I would never put an accent on my phones. I don't like overseas accents on the phone, etc., etc. And they all say they absolutely hate it, but the reality is that it works quite well. There's very little actual reaction to it. So we're playing with voice. We're doing a lot more stuff with our customers. One of the advantages we had with the Philippines is we could actually fairly dramatically improve what we do with our customers. We're doing a lot of things that we couldn't afford to do before. We contact them and make sure they're organised and make sure things are all and confirm things a lot more than we used to. So clients with us nowadays understand probably more about what's happening and are about to happen, and than they used to before, and that's that part of it.
That's because you've been able to sort of add in steps in the process of the customer experience that you wouldn't have been able to afford. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Our Australian call centre, because of cost, was really stretched. And we couldn't afford, we really didn't have the time or the people to be able to ring customers back, say two or 3 days before, to make sure they're all organised, make sure everything's on time, and they've make sure, if it's in a busy suburban street, that they've put their cars out the front to block off some space for the trucks to park and all that type of stuff. We couldn't afford to do that. We just couldn't afford to do it. But because of the Philippines, we're now doing it. So our services to our customers have improved as a result, and that involved voice, and the voice worked very, very well for us.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's often a really key issue, isn't it? Obstacle to overcome is that fear of that. So interesting that it's worked really well for you guys.
Yeah. Look, the fears are the same all the time. They go, what about security? Well, the security is exactly the same as in Australia. Honestly, your Australian staff don't steal your database. Why? Because they don't know what to do with it and they don't really care about it. It's not on their radar, and it's the same up there. They won't steal your database. They don't know what to do with it and they don't care about it. It's not on their radar. So security is not an issue. Security is not an issue. The accents on the phones are not an issue. As I said, the challenges up there are actually somewhat different than that. As I said, Americanism is probably one of my biggest challenge. We have a very strong Australianising program. When people come in, we Australianise them as quickly as we can. That means we introduce them to all the different words of everything. And so the challenges aren't where you think they are.
Interesting. So, Mike, look, conscious of time, we might sort of wrap up there, but was there anything, is there anything that you're thinking of in terms of what's coming up next for you?
Look, this globalization the ability to buy, sell and employ anywhere in the world means that most Australian businesses that I know and look inside can now sell their products everywhere in the world. They can certainly buy stuff everywhere in the world, and they can employ everywhere in the world. If they do that, they will become more profitable. They will go into growth mode, and all of that is really good for Australia. I think the future of Australia is going to come out of entrepreneurs, not out of the government. I don't think the government can do anything to help Australia. I think only entrepreneurs can help build the future of Australia, and embracing globalisation has to be the way to go. We were lucky back 20, 30 years ago when Lan Hancock and Holmes à Court embraced mining and decided to build the mining industry. If they hadn't done that, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I think the entrepreneurs of today have got to embrace globalisation for Australia's future. So for my grandchildren's future, I just urge everybody to become very worldly in the way they look at their business and grow, and because it's really, really good for Australia.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mike. They're really good parting advice. Actually, one question that I didn't get to ask was, who do you learn from, Mike? Who do you watch, either in person, books, blogs, presentations?
I think I follow Vern Harnish with a lot of the stuff he puts out. Most Friday newsletter is one that I read religiously. I think it's the main one I read.
It's one of my favourites too.
I know Vern is very careful not to get trapped into some of the false is probably the same way. There's so many blogs out there that are just really opinionated in what they're saying without actual fact behind them. Vern at least tries to be very factual in what he advises you. That's the main one I follow, I think.
Yep. Okay, that's great. And finally, how can people connect with you, Mike?
Oh, look, you can go into Mike's Manila Tours, or you can just simply email me directly at mike@ohagan.com.au. That's MIKE at Ohagan, OHAGAN.com.au. I'm happy to help anybody. Or if they look me up on LinkedIn, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn freak. I love LinkedIn, and although I have a PA that's watching it and controlling it a little bit, I do watch LinkedIn. So if anything comes in, I will see it on LinkedIn as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much again for joining us. I'll make sure all of those links and stuff are actually in the show notes too, so people can access them there. But thanks again, Mike. I really appreciate you joining us on the show today.
Thanks.
So I hope you really enjoyed the show. As always, please feel free to jump on over to bluewiremedia.com.au/book to go and download those 33 free web marketing templates. Thanks again.